This video is brought to you by Patreon. By signing up on the Phat Pack Magic Patreon, you get early access to all content, as well as grab bags of valuable cards and amazing mats exclusive to patrons. You can help keep coverage for Paper Magic alive by showing your support on the Phat Pack Magic Patreon today. Hello everyone and welcome back to Phat Pack Magic. We've got some awesome FNM Pioneer goodness here at Darkside Games, and that means 5 rounds of Pioneer. And we're starting off with an awesome deck here. Vince is playing Bant Company, and Noah is playing Grixis Mill, a homebrew that he wants to kind of take in and play against the standard metagame. So that's kind of interesting for me, because those homebrew decks, they can kind of just come out of nowhere. But are they good enough for what is some of the most established deck types? Now Vince starts off with a turn 1 Elvish Mystic, passing to Noah, who plays a Shockland and passes right back to Vince. Vince plays another land, swings in for 1, bringing Noah down to 19 before passing the turn back. Noah draws for turn, plays a land, and then goes to Mind Sculpt, milling the top 7 cards off of Vince's library. So that's kind of what his game plan is, slowly digging through Vince's deck and hoping to kill him through a decking before Vince can kill Noah. Noah takes 1 point of damage from an Elvish Mystic, draws for turn, leaves it on the table, and plays out an Ashiok Dream Render, which is going to mill 4 and completely exile Vince's graveyard. Vince draws for turn, takes 2 life from a Hallowed Fountain, and now he's got mana up for Spell Queller, but he can also drop a Teferi. However, I don't think Teferi is kind of what you want to do here at this point. Vince deciding on whether or not he wants to go to attack and maybe try and keep that Ashiok pinned down. And that's what he does, bringing Ashiok down to 3, but there's still a lot of milling left to be done. And it looks like... So Noah forgot to draw the card, and it looks like he thought it was an extra card drawn? That can be... that was another Mind Sculpt. That was another 7 cards off the top of Vince's library that was missed because he didn't put the card to his hand. Now, it looks like he's deciding on whether or not he wants to mill first, or maybe it looks like a breaking is going to come down first, get tucked underneath the Spell Queller. However, another 4 cards go off the top of Vince's library and into exile, and now Noah has a target for that Spell Queller attack. Vince draws for turn. He's got a Scavenging Ooze, but that's not really what he wants to do with his life total. So he swings in for 1 with the Elvish Mystic, bringing Noah down to 17, and 2 with the Spell Queller, killing off the Ashiok. Noah draws for turn, and here's an Essence Extraction that's going to get tucked underneath another Spell Queller. And it looks like all Noah has left in hand are 2 lands. But Vince has a commanding board presence, swinging in for 5 and bringing Noah down to 12. Noah draws for turn, plays out a land, and then passes the turn back. Vince has to take the advantage here. He's got a Spell Queller in hand. He can really counter and do a lot of juicy good stuff against Noah's deck. But here comes 5 more damage, bringing Noah down to 7. Vince taking 2 damage from playing a Shockland, and instead of holding up Spell Queller, he's going to play out Teferi, and it looks like he's just going to plus Teferi, meaning no instant speed shenanigans. Noah looks like he's drawn another land, and here comes a Startled Awake, a sorcery for 4 mana from Shadows over Innistrad. It's going to mill 13 cards off the top of Vince's library. But Vince has a lot of power in play. I don't think the Startled Awake is going to do much, because here comes Vince crashing in for 5, bringing Noah down to 2, and he can kind of afford to play out another threat, and it's Selfless Spirit, which means that removal just isn't going to cut it for Noah. Noah decides he wants to kind of get a little bit more information with an Ashiok. However, Vince says no, denying him with the Spell Queller, and that is the game for Vince. And we are going to skip ahead and go to game 2 right now. And here we go. It's game 2. Vince leads Noah 1-0, and both players are about to draw their opening hands. And I think for Noah, what he really needs is a lot more creature interaction and hopefully something to couple with those spells. Because he's basically playing a form of burn. And unfortunately, whereas burn can kind of hit spells and creatures, Noah's burn spells are basically just mill. But he starts to turn off with a temple that's going to come into play tapped, and Vince plays out a turn 1 Llanowar Elves. Vince has another Scry land, and then keeps it on top before passing the turn back to Vince. Vince takes 2 damage, going down to 18, playing out a Breeding Pool, and 3 mana reveals a Lovestruck Beast, a 5/5 that can only swing if Vince has a 1/1 creature, and Llanowar Elves is certainly a 1/1 creature. Noah is kind of pinned down here. He needs a way to deal with that Lovestruck Beast, but Essence Extraction only deals 3 damage. Granted, it'll gain him 3 life, but that's not enough to deal with the beast. But it looks like he's going to take 2 with a Shock Land, playing a Steam Fence untapped, and he's going to Essence Extraction the Elf instead, dealing 3 damage to it and gaining him 3 life, and hopefully Vince doesn't have another Elf to back it up with. Unfortunately, I see a Lovestruck Beast in Vince's hand. He plays a Botanical Sanctum, taking the Lovestruck Beast on an adventure to make a 1/1 creature token, and now the other Lovestruck Beast is going to swing in for 5, bringing Noah down to 16. That's not what you want to see here. He draws for turn, and he's got another Essence Extraction in hand, but is that worth the gamble? He needs to kind of start in on the mill plan, but he's unable to get through all these creatures. Instead, he plays an Essence Extraction, dealing 3 damage to a human and gaining 3 life and putting him back up to 19. Vince playing a Breeding Pool, taking 2 life, and he's kind of stuck on white mana here, especially because he's got Dovin's Veto in hand. Then he passes the turn to Noah, who draws, leaving the card on the table. It seems to be a really interesting habit, and maybe not the worst one, but it definitely leads to situations where he lost a Mind Sculpt in the earlier game. However, that's why Vincent took 2 life. He's got a Collected Company off the top, and it looks like it's a Spell Queller and a Tireless Tracker. Now that Mind Sculpt goes right underneath the Spell Queller, and the Tireless Tracker comes into play. A beautiful 3/2 that's going to be able to start crashing in and gaining card advantage, but Noah has the follow-up. It's a Breaking and Entering to mill the top 8 cards off of Vince's library. And he passes the turn back to Vince. Vince has 5 power now that he can start swinging with, but he finally drew a white source. However, it looks like another Tireless Tracker is going to come down before the land comes in, making 2 clue tokens. Vince takes 2 life off this exchange to make the Hallowed Fountain come into play untapped, but now he's going to be able to crash in for 5, potentially 6 damage. Vince is only going to save 5, leaving mana open for that Dovin's Veto and equalizing life totals 14-14. Noah is kind of clocked here. He's got a lot of creatures and potential creatures that could come in, and he needs to figure out a way to get through them. Looks like he's going over the options in hand. He's got a removal spell that's a sacrifice rather than a direct kill spell, like Doomblade. No, it's a sacrifice effect, and it'll make Vince gain some life, but that's not what Noah needs here. He needs to kind of, he needs to clear out this board and then start the mill plan. Instead, he passes the turn back to Vince. Vince uses a clue token, giving both of his Tireless Trackers a +1/+1 counter and then drawing a card. Noah deciding in response, he's going to Grizzly Spectacle one of the Tireless Trackers, and it's going to mill that creature's power off the top of Vince's library. So 4 cards go off the top, and now Noah is only facing down 6 damage. Oh, only 6 damage on the next turn. Vince is He's in a commanding position here. He's got a Dovin's Veto in case something really nasty goes on. He's going to sacrifice a clue token to draw another card. And this is going to be... Ooh, wow. He found a Llanowar Elf. And now, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12 damage coming in right at Noah, bringing Noah down to 2. He plays a land, gets a clue token. Noah has 1 turn to clear this board, and I don't think Damnation is in the format. However, Noah taking a clutch phone call as he plays a Wall of Lost Thoughts, a mill top 4. He mills 4 from the wall, and then another mill 4 from the spell. That's going to be 8 cards going to the yard. And it looks like another creature just on blocking duty. Vince says, that's fine, I don't mind it. Instead, he's just going to draw another card off the clue token. And Noah only has 2 creatures. He's only at 2 life. I think he's just dead to Spell Queller here. Vince plays a land, making sure to not make any mistakes. Here's Teferi and Deputy of Detention, and crashes in. There's lethal, and Vince is going to seal the match. Now, I love rooting for the underdog, but Vince's Bant Company deck is just so powerful, and it's really easy to see why it's hard for those brewing kind of interesting decks to make it in a competitive environment. But that's it for us today on Phat Pack Magic. However, stay tuned because we are just getting started for this FNM Pioneer event. We've got 4 more rounds, and we've got more Bant Company on the way. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, and make sure you tap on that like button. It makes me feel so good and warm and fuzzy inside when you do it. Also, check out behind the scenes footage on Instagram, where you can see all kinds of crazy stuff that goes on with Cube, and how I set up the live coverage for these events. But if you like this content and you want to support it, check us out on Patreon. We've got all sorts of gift bags, grab bags, and once I hit that benchmark of $500 a month, I can start doing live Twitch streams of all kinds of events. We're talking FNM Pioneer, maybe Commander, Draft, Vintage Cube. I'm talking the whole suite of stuff, and I just need your support to keep this rolling. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and may all your packs be fat.